Go time? Okay. What's up, guys? Welcome back to our second episode of the Mr. Homegrown Show. This week we sit down with Mark, the owner and founder, the creator of the GreenGro product. He's going to give us an introduction to the company, tell us a little bit about his background. Also, we'll talk a little bit about our sponsorship with GreenGro. They'll be sponsoring us here at HomeGrown Supplies in the garden and back, also at my garden at home. And if you haven't yet, please like, share, subscribe to the video, help us grow the content, and let's get into it. Thanks. Yep, it's not just what I'm doing, it's like, why do I do this, and what's really working behind the scenes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's kind of, sort of where we came from. Like a lot of our products we developed, people told us shouldn't exist and they couldn't exist and they wouldn't work. And we're like, well, we're going to try some shit. So, you know, and so far it's worked out for us because, I mean, if you go off of the ag science, there's a bunch of universities and they're all funded by giant corporations. Like the ag departments at every university are funded by corporations like, I don't know if I can name them, I'll get sued, but I mean,
Yeah.
like the big, chemical companies and fertilizer companies fund a lot of the ag department. So then you have all these kids that come out of ag school already frontal cortex is loaded with like the way that these corporations want to do things.
Well, you mentioned school. Let's start there. What's your background? How did you get to where you're at today? What's your beginning point?
I mean, the beginning point was that like I learned like organic agriculture, composting, compost teas and stuff from my grandfather, who was a farmer in Kansas and then moved out to Southern California along the coast and had huge vegetable gardens. And he did it all with like chicken scraps, table scraps, eggs, everything else, and just composting, building beds, building worm farms, and then growing organic soil. So like I had an early, since I was 5 years old, I learned the basics of it. And then I went to University of California, Santa Barbara, and I studied archaeology. And what I focused on was archaeology of agriculture. So
Okay.
how ancient cultures approached agriculture, right? Because people forget, but you can't have a population of 50 to 100,000 people without sophisticated agriculture. It doesn't work. Hunter-gatherers could only support up to about 5,000 people. So anything above that becomes, dwelling, city, state, hood. And so like a lot of my studying was Native American agriculture, especially Central and Southern America, where you had the most sophisticated cities in the world, over the last 1,000 years.
What were some of the major findings of those areas during your studies?
Yeah, I mean, the major findings were, they were doing regenerative ag techniques. They were maximizing water use efficiencies by like having, they basically built reservoirs around a lot of their gardens or ag fields so that it would like filter in so that they didn't have to water. But there'd be enough water that would filter up. So their water use efficiencies were next level. They wouldn't monocrop, they would polycrop. And then they focused on soil health rather than feeding the plant. So like one of the biggest achievements that came out of our studies was terra preta, which was pretty much called black earth, black gold. And the Native American populations down there in Central and South America made this amendment every year that's almost identical to our Earthshine product. They took hardwood biochar that they made, they mixed it with their trash piles, which were compost piles, fish and soybeans and, trace minerals, all that kind of stuff, right? Worm castings, whatever. They mixed the biochar with all of their trash pile, which is like basically compost. And then they would blend that into the soil in the fall at the end of their season after they cut everything down. And then they got pushed out by the Spaniards like 500 years ago. But us going back there as archaeologists, they still have the most fertile soil on the entire planet right now. Wow. So there's pockets of their soil where they used to inhabit those areas. They're called like terra preta soil that to this day is the richest, most microbially dense, mineral rich soil on the planet. And they created that 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. So
is that where some of the ideas for your Earthshine product came from then?
Well, I rediscovered it. So pretty much nobody was making it. Nobody knew how to do it. The only thing that people had talked about was like, can we dig this earth up and move it and sell it into a product? I was like, that's not effective. You have to make a concentrate. So after I finished my studies at UCSB, I went to work immediately founding my company and formulating and strategizing and sourcing how to put this product together. So, we spent 2 years putting all that together based on the data we had from Central and South America. And then we also brought in the mycorrhizae and beneficial bacteria piece to it because that was the next best thing that we found, that like the mycorrhizal colonization rates on their plants are through the roof. So, kind of having a cohesive, you know, picture of what actually was happening in the soil was they weren't doing much to feed their soil. They let the microbes feed the soil and they fed the microbes. They just didn't know it, right? Or maybe they did know it. I don't know. But, 1,000 years ago, they didn't know that microbes really existed. So, I mean, they must have had some advanced knowledge, but we couldn't. What we did is we bet the farm on the fact that if this worked 1,000 years ago to feed hundreds of thousands of people, it absolutely would work today.
Yeah,
And
they
it'd be
knew
more.
what they were doing was working.
Yep, exactly. So I mean, so we based the Earthshine formula off of like trial and error of what I saw. I analyzed the soil, I looked at it, I looked at what the most common elements they were using were. Soybeans was the crop, in some of the areas, hardwood biochar, high trace minerals from the mountain runoff right there in the Amazonian basin. They had high mineral content in the soils, heavy worm population in there for some reason. So that's where GreenGro was like, okay, we also need to get the microbes to ferment this because they were fermenting almost the product before it went in the ground, kind of like a bokashi. So once we put all the components together and fermented it with the microbes that we had, it started operating exactly as the ancients had done. We started seeing the same plant health benefits, soil rejuvenation. We took soil that could have been 20 years old and depleted and made it look like brand new soil again. So we knew at that point that was time to like really launch the product and launch the company.
So you knew coming right out of school that what you were doing, that you were building towards this business and getting
Yeah.
into this. And how long ago was that? How old were you?
So, man, that was like basically studying the stuff in 2006 and 7.
Okay.
So, that's when we finished up. So, and then we just launched right after that.
Okay.
So I don't know, 15 plus years ago.
Cool.
And, from there, it kind of expanded out from there going, okay, dry amendment fertilizers, that's turn of the century stuff that not only my grandparents and great grandparents were using, but also Native Americans were using most of the components that we have in our, so what we did is we combined the Earthshine with dry amendment fertilizers, like fish meal. So we use catfish meal from Louisiana, the best fish meal on earth, way better than most people who are using codfish meal from, whatever's left over from cutting fillets out of Alaska.
Yeah. So you guys are putting thought into what you're using, how you source. It's not just anything, any ingredients. You're really being thoughtful.
Yeah, we're being thoughtful and we're trying to stay true to kind of like what we're trying to do is we're trying to take Native American and ancient agricultural techniques, combine them with modern biotechnology, and put them into them in a packaged way so that customers can have the same results every time.
Consistency.
And yeah, consistency. And I mean, the thing is that there's been a lot of customers of ours that have said, hey, your products are not the cheapest. And I'm like, yeah, but they're the best because we are following an ancient recipe, like I'm sorry they didn't have Walmarts back in, 1,000 years ago and stuff. So it's like, you got to do what you could do, and we know that their health was a lot better a long time ago than now. We know that our soils are depleted of minerals by over 50% versus 100 years ago. And I think no one's asking the question why, because the big ag universities are saying just hit it with mineral salts.
Yeah. Now, I'm just using your soil for the first time, but I have used your amendments before. Tell me a little bit about the soil. How does that work? It comes preloaded. Do I
Yep.
need to be using everything or you?
No, I
tell
mean, yeah, I mean, the soil is pretty much a living soil. So we mix in the Earthshine biochar blend, the Prylan's veg, worm castings that we make here in California. My business partner makes them. It's all worm castings only eat organic vegetable waste. Unlike most worm castings in the country that are made off of tree trimmings or manure or whatever, this is made off of organic vegetable waste. So way cleaner, the worms eat through it faster, higher nutrient density, all that kind of stuff. And then we're using the peat moss that I import. It's a dirty word, but from Russia. So it's a white peat. So the peat moss, in my opinion, from Russia is the best in the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the politics are. It's like that's
It's
where the
about
best peat moss comes from, you know?
the right ingredient from the right place. Yep.
How did you
Exactly.
figure out that like that area or territory could have the best peat moss? Like, how do you start that process?
Yeah, I mean, we had been doing test trials with the Canadian peat, for a long time. We had looked at some of the Northern European peat, and then finally I met this business guy from Russia that was like, yeah, I mean, most of my clients are running some of the largest nurseries you've ever seen, and they're producing vegetables and crops and plants, and they're using Russian peat and lower heavy metals, lower EC, you know, clean, pristine virgin peat,
Wow.
And so I was like, "Fuck, I'll try it, right? Let's look at it. And it just performed better on a peat by peat basis versus the other stuff. And lower heavy metals to me was important. Um, they're also like over harvesting peat moss in Canada. So what they do, if you guys don't know, but basically what they do is they have these things called horizons, right? Which is like horizon A, B, and C. So when you go to a peat bog, they're going to shave off the top and get the premium peat, and then they have the darker peat, and they have the black peat at the bottom. The black peat's the most decomposed. The medium, coffee colored peat's the medium horizon, and the blonde peat's at the top. And so what a lot of these companies will do is they'll start blending the horizons together to make a homogenized blend, because they have a lot of the black and the brown, and they may not as much of the blonde, so they kind of mix them together. There's nothing wrong with the stuff at the bottom. The black peat's like a decomposed, almost like a humus, right? But the problem is that you can have higher levels of heavy metals based upon that, and you have different things going on. I mean, mostly people want the top horizon and the middle horizon for substrate, especially if you're trying to go like clean and sterile. So, I just buy the peat, the blonde white peat from Russia, and mix it with my worm castings. I load it up with my own microbes, my own philosophy. So it's a clean slate. And then we do coconut coir from Indonesia. We work directly with the factory out there. We pretty much buy everything that they produce. So we control the quality, we control the quantity, we control how many times they rinse it, and that gets delivered to our facility here in California. And then so we mix that together, with the worm castings, the Pridelands veg amendments, and the Earthshine. It's really simple. I mean, there's no secret behind our soil. It works because there's no bullshit filler. Almost all soils out there have to have filler to get the price point where they want it to be.
And what are those fillers? Like, could you find that if you're reading the ingredients?
Yeah, I mean, typically aged forest byproduct, how much of that is in there, right? If it's a few percentage points, okay, fine. But if that's a big chunk of it, that's cheap, right? That bugs come from that. Compost in California and Oregon, where a lot of the soils are produced, compost is like $20 a yard versus premium soil is like $200 a yard. So you can see if you add in the compost that's cheap, you're going to get, a cost savings. The problem is with compost, though, if it's not done the right way, you're going to have what's called green waste compost being used. So you have everything from your trimmings on your tree to your trimmings from your grass to like where you throw your dog shit out, right? And that goes in your compost, or your bin, right? The green waste bin, especially here in California. So people that are spraying their yard with Roundup or Eagle 20 or any of these chemicals, that gets pushed through into the compost.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Yeah, so I mean, people are using, also redwood bark or barks or wood dust or some type of wood byproduct. Wood byproducts, again, are really cheap, but they make you chase nitrogen. So woody products, you always have to throw more nitrogen at your soil because it's being absorbed into the wood.
So using this soil, how far through a grow? How would I use this? Given that I'm growing cannabis, obviously here.
Yeah.
How far? What do I do? Water only? How am I going to use this?
Yeah, I mean, I would water only or do compost teas. I think preferably I would do a compost tea. And if people are afraid of doing compost teas, they can literally just take our green aminos and bricks product, mix them together in equal parts, and there's an instant compost tea. So super simple. But compost tea once a week. If you want to do a foliar, if you like to have fun, do a foliar once a week, and that's it. There's enough food in the soil for 5 weeks. And I don't mean like 5 weeks like most companies say that's on a bag. I mean, clock me, time me,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I've never got no 5 weeks out of any other bag. So I'm looking forward to using this. Now, given what I'm growing, what is your history? What's your experience with the cannabis plant? Take me back.
I've been growing cannabis semi-commercially because we were doing like right before it went rec, it was like medical here in California, but I mean it was like heavy duty farms still. So
Yeah.
I started cultivating in 2004, working on some farms that my dad's friends and other people had out here. So I started learning from the ground up. I had to trudge soil, I had to do fertility programs, I had to cut things down, trim things, plant
Yeah.
things, clone
So there's
things.
some family history there.
Yeah. And I mean, my grandpa was growing weed since the 80s, you know? So, and not, I mean, like crazy amounts, but like trees, like maybe 10 to 12 trees, like,
Yep.
I don't know, 12 feet tall, maybe got like 10 to 15 pounds per plant, kind of stuff.
I like not much.
Well, I mean, just like only 10 plants. Like it wasn't like a huge farm. It was a lot of work because of just the size of the plant,
Yeah.
But, you know, I started studying that. And then also when I was in college, I was making trips back to those farms to go back to college campus and make sure I had really good, Mendocino quality cannabis down there.
So
I also grew when I was in college too.
what was the mindset when you put GreenGro together? Was the cannabis industry in
Yeah.
there or okay, that
Yeah.
was the driving force, part of the big
Yeah,
ideas?
it was 50-50. So 50% I wanted to make sure that at the time I just thought that people were not making clean medicine and
Yep.
everything I was getting, I would get samples from other brokers or vendors and I'd be like, this is garbage. This is terrible. Like, why would you even say this is medical, right? Because we
Yep.
kept having to say, oh, here's your medical card. And, it would be terrible. So that I was like, okay, I need to fix this. And then on top of that, I had a really big passion for like the world food crisis, right? The world food crisis like pretty much dictates that, almost 30% of the world's food supply gets wasted or thrown away. And the funny thing is a lot of the food that's grown like in Africa gets exported out. So they don't even have enough food for themselves because they're growing food for other, like European and other countries. And it's really due to inefficiencies, right? Their soils are being depleted. They can't produce as much food. And so it's going to get worse and worse over time. So I was like, okay, two birds, one stone. Cannabis people are going to be early adopters because they are willing to do whatever it takes to make their plant as healthy as possible and, obviously have as much yield as possible. So those are always going to be the early adopters. The people that are harder to get are going to be the people that have been doing it for 50 years one way and don't believe they should change anything. So it's funny because you start getting commercial recreational farms to use the GreenGro program, and then you have their ag inspectors coming in going, what are you guys doing? And they're seeing how well it's working. And they're like, whoa, this is weird. I never even thought of this. And so like now you have biochar and those types of products now being in the conversation and big ag out here in California. So it's kind of just like a drip marketing kind of thing, right?
Yep.
Now, are you guys organic certified?
Yeah, I mean, every product is organic certified within reason, right? Some products, California is like the largest certifying body in the nation because they have the NOP program, the National Organic Program through the USDA. So, we're registered with them for all of our products, but there's a few products that California just doesn't want to certify organic because they don't understand like our product, like bricks, it has sugar in it and different types of sugars. And so they're like, well, that's not a plant food. So how are you registering that organic, and what does this even mean? So we're still kind of ahead of the curve on a few of those things, but Earthshine, Veg, Bloom, Flower Finisher, Prylan's Defense, they're all certified organic.
Nice.
So but yeah, I mean, we were organic before organic certification existed in California. So like for the Earthshine biochar blend, we were the first company to register a biochar amendment in California. They didn't even know what to do with those. They didn't even know how to register it because that ingredient wasn't in their list.
Yeah.
So
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
So where do you see the future of GreenGro? What's new? What's around the corner? What else is coming down the road?
Yeah, I mean, we're expanding kind of our reach across the country. We're putting in some 3PLs in different places in the country, so we can have kind of strategic launch off points, because we're seeing that there's a huge collapse in the traditional distribution model from our industry. There used to be basically Sunlight Supply, Hydrofarm, and now both those companies are either hurting really bad or they're completely changing their business models. And so store owners across the nation are having fewer and fewer options to choose from in products, and less availability and higher prices. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to help that by put strategic launching points across the country so we can work with stores in the region that want to be a GreenGro mover. We also don't believe in selling to every store. We think that dilutes the brand. We think there needs to be, brand ambassadors is the word I use. Because, I mean, a brand ambassador is going to be pushing the product, selling the product, and understanding the product. And they're going to create the drive for the whole region. So they need to be put in the best position possible, So that's kind of what our philosophy is. But I mean, in terms of product lines, I mean, I have 50 other products already developed. It's just like, launching a product costs like $500,000,
Oh.
So it's like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit of time and work, obviously.
Yeah. So it's like we want to make sure that we're getting proper market adoption of the products we have, and then making sure that like we're getting penetration for, like the soil, for example. I mean, we've had the soil out in the West Coast for 5 years, or more. And now we're just really stomping the grounds into the Midwest and East Coast to try to get traction.
Yep. And speaking of soil, I know we got the veg. So what else do you have for soil?
Yeah, so we have Earthshine soil, which is like a living soil that kind of just mixed with the Earthshine amendment. And I consider it like a seed starting mix or a seedling mix, because it's going to have a teeny bit of food in it, but mostly just enough to start seeds and clones in. And then people can do whatever they want. They can use GreenGro products with it, or
add on top of it or something.
add on top of it. Exactly. So, and that, that one I think is a 2 cubic foot bag. And
Okay.
the Prylan's Premium is a 1.5.
Yep.
And then we do have a bloom soil, but bloom soil seems to be really specific to the grower. So usually bloom soil is something that if somebody are doing quick flips, like they're vegging for 2 weeks and flipping, the bloom soil is a great option for, because you have all the bloom food and additives already added to it.
Okay.
So you have 4 weeks solid bloom food. So if all you want to do is compost tea and foliar, you're good. But I mean, those are the 3 soils we have. And, by far, I think the Prylan's Premium is the front runner for all those. We do have a cocoa perlite worm casting soil coming out in the fall. We're getting bags made for it right now. We mix green aminos with it. So it's a really big pop, So a lot of indoor guys are using that right now in Mendocino Coast and Sacramento area. So, we're going to be launching it nationwide in the fall.
Cool.
So, there's a lot of cocoa perlite soils out there, but I mean, I think what people are missing with that is we're not putting chemicals with ours. It's literally like it's a living cocoa perlite when it rives.
Yeah. So you got a lot going on. Sounds like you're very busy. Let me ask you, how do you find balance with all this work and your personal life? Or do you have time for one? I know me trying to be in business, I don't really have much. It's kind of work and sleep. Where do you have kids? Do you find time or?
Yeah, I have 2 kids with one on the way at the very end of May.
Oh, congratulations.
So, yeah, thanks. So,
Awesome.
my wife and kids live in Boise, Idaho.
Okay.
They moved out there during the pandemic in the foothills up there. Because because we were originally living outside Portland, Oregon, and things got crazy, you know, you know. So they live out there. So I'm here at GreenGro in California 2 weeks a month, and then I'm up there for 2 weeks a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
then I
2 weeks
run,
on, 2 weeks off.
yeah. And at the
So-
same time, I'm running my other company. So I own like another company too that manufactures large scale mycorrhizae and beneficial bacteria for the ag industry.
Okay.
So, you know, we work with like wonderful pistachios. I mean, all these large, you know, ag outfits, pecans, vineyards, Gallo wine. I mean, all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah. So that business kind of like also is like vertically integrated into GreenGro, and that it provides raw materials like the mycorrhiza and the beneficial bacteria for all GreenGro's products.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let me ask you your cannabis experience. Let's go back to that for a second. Do you have a preference, a particular flavor, a strain, a cultivar? Like what's
Yeah, I mean,
what's your style?
yeah, I mean, typically I've always had a sweet tooth. So, you know, I've cultivated a lot of strains that were not just fruity, but a little bit sweeter. You know, we had a strain that I've lost, unfortunately, but in 2006,
Yeah.
I used to grow it. It was called Pink Cream Soda,
Ooh,
and it smelled like if you ever had like a Jones Soda Company, like their cream soda, like a
Yep.
blueberry cream soda. That's what it smelled like.
oh,
Exactly.
super sweet.
Yeah, and it had like you could even look it up on Google. They have some pictures of the strain, but it's lost to time at this point. But there was like striations of pink, purple, green, and orange. Because you had orange hairs and you had pink striations through it and a little bit of purple. It was crazy. And I mean, it wasn't a heavy yielder. That was the issue. So, you know, I think a lot of people were saying, yeah, we love this, but I was charging so much for it because no one had anything like it. And then, you know, the whole gas explosion came through, and like, you know, the fruitier, sweeter things kind of went away for like 10 years.
Do you currently have your own personal garden? Are you growing
Yeah.
now? Yep.
Yeah.
What's in your garden?
So, and I mean, right now I'm starting it. So, because you know, we're doing kind of like, I always do an outdoor. So,
Okay.
yeah, we're going to be starting it. We're going to be using a couple different seed companies, High-Low Seed Company, and then we do some stuff from Mosca. He typically sends
Okay.
us seeds, you know.
Yep.
Um,
He's from out
but
here.
yeah, so we typically run a few things like that. But I mean, what we've been running the last 2 years is White Alien Fire OG. It's been pretty easy for me to grow while I'm traveling. So I'm kind of a lazy gardener. So I wanted something that's going to be less finicky, less prone to powdery mildew and mold, and I can just top dress it once every 2 weeks and do some teas
Yeah.
on the road, you know?
Are you still pretty passionate about growing, or is it just kind of something that you're still doing as a hobby? Like I know with me, it comes and goes because I'm just really busy. But you know, it is how I got here, right? It's what I was really passionate about. I'm just kind of starting over like you again. I just started some seeds, so trying to really get back into it. Where's your heart at with it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm very passionate about it. I just think that, you know, with having ADD like a ping pong ball, it's like I start the plant, I feed it, and it gets really big, and then I just walk away, and I'm like, oh shit,
Yep.
I need to defoliate that. I need to trim off some of the branches. I need to foliar
Okay,
spray.
so that's kind of cool. I feel better hearing that from someone as smart as you, who's got like a whole educational background, because the same thing happens with me. I'm really good at kind of like letting my plants go and getting really bad and letting them get sick and then bringing them back to, you know, health and life. But it's just, I'm busy. I have so much going on, and it's some days it's like, oh, I know I should feed my plants, but I really just want to go to bed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that happens too. Like, you know, when it's kind of like when you have 7 irons in the fire, it's like one of the irons is gonna be a little bit less hot, you know? So, and I mean, I would say that something that I should know better than is that I should be doing IPM sprays, and I know I should be doing it. And then I'm just like, nah, I don't want to.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I mean,
All
that's where I get hit is like, you know, I'll have 2 years of no bugs at all. So I'm just
Yeah.
like, I don't need to do it. And then one year I get hit with heavy pest pressure, and I'm like, what's going on here? You know? So
Okay. I feel better now.
I mean,
I'm
yeah,
not the only one.
you're a busy guy, you know, it's like it's for me, like I'm half the month not even here, other half the month I'm on the road. where I'm at in Boise, where it's like,
Something's
so
got to be sacrificed. And
yeah,
it's normally the plants, right?
exactly. So yeah,
Awesome.
but I wasn't sure what other topics you guys wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, I don't know. We're all over the place.
I thought it would be interesting to talk about like why top dressing and why compost teas. And
That's
why do you,
a good topic, actually. I could give you guys a topic about the relationship between terpenes and microbials, right? That's probably something that
Yes.
people actually want to know. From the uneducated grower standpoint, people understand that terpenes equal the smell, aroma, taste of a flower or anything, right? Mint oil, right? There's a terpene that makes it smell, right? In the oil. The same thing with rosemary oil. Those are terpenes we're smelling, right? Turpentine comes from terpenes from pine and pitch, right? From the oil. So terpenes are basically a plant's biochemical language that allows it to communicate with its surrounding environments. It was literally evolved over time. Every terpene attracts different microorganisms or macroorganisms. So the higher the terpene count, there's a direct correlation to the higher the microbial or macrobiotics around the plant, right? I put it like this. If you have a kid that grew up in the middle of the Wyoming forest, didn't have any friends to talk to ever, he's probably going to be a little bit hard to communicate with, right? But you take a guy, drop him in Chicago, he grew up in Chicago his whole life, he knows how to communicate with anyone around him from diverse backgrounds, knows how to get what he wants, right?
Yep.
A plant's the same way. So a plant's not going to produce as much terpenes if there's no one to talk to. So when you have these growers that are growing in sterile environments using salts that start with the A word, typically what happens is that makes a sterile environment. So if you have a sterile environment, why is the plant going to put out more terpenes? What is the purpose?
It doesn't have anything there to build that relationship with.
Exactly. So, I mean, when you have living soil, your top dressing is not feeding the plant. So we have to get to that out of our mind right now. We are never top dressing to feed the plant. We are top dressing to feed the microbes.
Building
the
the community.
Yep. And then the microbes feed to the plant. So the more we build our microbial population in the soil, the higher the terpene count is going to be finished at. Because there are going to be a lot of communications back and forth between the plant and microbes. And it could be limonene, right? Or myrcene, or, pinene, or the other types of, each one of those types of terpenes is for a different microorganism, or they respond to that microorganism better. So one could be like, hey, go get me some water. One could be, go get me some nutrients. I need some phosphorus. Hey, protect my roots, clean my roots, right? These are all tasks that microbes do. It's an economy below the soil. The plant pays the microbes and carbohydrates for doing the tasks that it asks them to do through its terpene.
Yes, there's more than just pushing N, P's, and K's through the plant.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I always tell people. If you want your terpenes to go up, you need to increase your microbial content and organic content. There's no other way to do it. I know the growers want something to be amazing. They want it to be in this hand amazing, in this hand easy. And it's like, well, you have to have the microbes. And if you don't have that, then you're just growing with salts. And if you're just growing with salts, be happy with what you get.
Yep.
I'm curious, how would you, for the outdoor growers, because everyone's popping their seeds inside right now and they're about to be outside, how would you run your program in an outdoor setting?
Yeah, I mean, that's our bread and butter. So typically we say, use the green aminos for when you're popping seeds and doing clones, because it's going to really produce dramatic health benefits to the plant and a huge root growth, right? The green aminos is like the unsung hero of the whole GreenGro line. It can be used as a Swiss Army knife. I use it as a cloning solution, seed generating solution. I use it as a foliar spray for teenagers to prevent transplant shock, right? So that's the first part, right? When I transplant the roots and I have any access to the root ball, you dip that in the granular mycorrhizae. Boom, done. Then that goes into the veg pot or your bed. Make sure that you have good soil in there, preferably GreenGro, but if not, make sure it's peat heavy with worm castings and perlite. You can add your own compost if you made it yourself, but don't add compost from the waste dump. And then usually, if you don't have our fertilizer soil, then I would say start top dressing probably 2 weeks after you transplant. If you're in a veg cycle outdoor, and I'm talking about beds, you're in a bed system or you're in a large pot. So you top dress once every 2 weeks on the veg cycle while doing weekly teas with like green aminos and bricks and stuff like that. And I might do a foliar spray if I have time. It's really that simple. Like literally people are blown away by how simple it is. There's not a lot of touching to do. And a lot of guys are like kind of upset. So like, dude, I want to touch my plant every day. And I'm like, that's fine. You can do that. You can defoliate it. You
Go
can
hang out.
Yeah, you can go hang out with it. You can put some IPM sprays on it, whatever. But the initial phases are pretty simple. You know, if I have soil from last year, I'm going to mix the earthshine and veg food into that soil. You know, transplant with the mycorrhizae, hit it with green aminos to get the plant's health up. And then once you start transitioning, I do a top dress of the flower finisher at the week of transition to set flower site production. And then from there, I just top dress bloom and do a compost tea once a week until I get to the last 4 weeks of flower. And then I just do flower finisher with bricks and a tea, still top dress with the bloom.
What would you say for those indoor growers that are growing inside that just want to constantly push their plants, push? What would you do there? What would you do different compared to that outdoor easy set it and forget it?
I mean, if they want to push, then they can top dress weekly and they can compost tea bi-weekly, like twice a week, and they should foliar spray once a week. It doesn't change much because we're pushing the microbes. We can only push the microbes as hard as we can push the microbes, you know? If they want to really push though, they can hit it with our hybrid. Our hybrid veg and bloom is a mix of 50% mineral salts, 50% organic dry solubles. So you can give it a punch with that if they don't want to be 100% organic. But like I always say, just you can punch it once every 2 weeks with that stuff, and it's really going to change the plant's growth trajectory.
Okay.
Yeah, especially in areas where people are having hard time getting things to densify. You know, it's a high humidity environment or whatever. You hit it with our hybrid bloom like twice during the bloom cycle, it changes things.
So research and development is really important. And you mentioned at the beginning about the universities and them doing studies. Do you do studies with your company, or are you guys hired out, or what's that like for you guys?
You know, twofold. I mean, one, we have, you know, larger farms. Usually, like because we're doing a lot of cannabis science, we'll pick larger recreational farms and we'll pick rows. And we'll say, this is our row. And then we'll do tests. Like, you're using mineral salts on all this, right? Bag of mineral salts. On row number 1, which is maybe quarter acre, whatever, we'll say, let's use green aminos and bricks on top of your mineral salts. And then everything else is the same. So you have a 1 acre trial almost. And then we're going to be testing for the difference in terpene development. If the terpenes off of test row A are different than the rest of the rows, then we know that we had a net effect. And if it's the same or close to the same, we rerun the trial, the larger subset. You know, we know from thousands of studies, plus, you know, our other company doing university studies, we know what mycorrhizae does to roots. We understand how that works. We understand the benefit in agriculture. So we're not rerunning that trial in cannabis because we know how well mycorrhizae and cannabis associate together. But in terms of like test trials for farms, we also do like how we can prove you can recycle your soil for years by using the right kind of amendments in microbe strategy. So we have some guys up here, Humboldt, that have been recycling their soil for 7 years now. And just using our products, the earthshine, the veg, microbials, and then they put a little bit of maybe perlite in there. And it's getting better and better and better and better, you know? So, you know, it just depends on I mean, if you're on an outdoor, like some of our farms are 22 acres, like you just can't throw your soil out, you know, every year. It's like not feasible.
Not cost efficient. No, there's
not cost efficient. So what we'll do is we'll come in, we'll do a program, like just do a soil analysis. Let's look at the carbon and nitrogen ratio. Let's look at the mineralization. Let's look at where the salts are at, and then we'll target, you know? And to be honest, most of it's as simple as mixing earthshine into their soil, because that provides the microbes, humic, fulvic, trace minerals, carbon.
With the growing legalization of cannabis, do you feel like that's having an impact on your business?
Yeah. Yeah, because you kind of have waves, right? Where you have people coming in that are big corporations now that have millions of dollars. They're trying to run row crop on 20 acres plus. I mean, one of the farms that we're trying to quote for right now is 110 acres of cannabis in California. And on that scale, you can't produce quality. That's all going to go for like pre-roll or squashing,
Yeah.
So, I mean, at that point, it's like, what metrics are we looking to help them with? In terms of craft organic cannabis growers, that business for us is going up because you have a lot of people across the nation that were afraid to grow cannabis for 30 years, 40 years that, might be close to retirement age. They want to grow 6 plants.
Yep. That's the business I'm in. I understand that exactly.
Yep. So that's what we've seen a huge impact in growth in. I mean, when we first started the business, it was pretty much 90% of our sales were Southern Oregon and Northern California. It was all growers that were legacy growers that grew 99 plants in 200-gallon smart pots. That's kind of transitioning away.
Yep. Now it's the smaller home grower, the guy who's like, hey, I can do this. Let me have my 5 or 6 plants.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that there's always going to be a market for that. It's kind of like here in Napa, Sonoma, kind of where we're based, there was like the wine industry, and the wine industry got really big in like the 70s and 80s, and they got all bought up by these giant corporations. All the wine got standardized and was shitty. And then organic, high quality, like big brand wine started coming in and saying, well, we can make wine that is $5 a bottle, or we can make wine that's $100 a bottle that's life changing, right? That, like, you went to a fancy restaurant and like, there's a huge difference between this wine and this wine. So that happened already in California once, right? Now it's happening in the cannabis market, where we had the rustic farmers get bought out by all the corporations. And now the Californians are saying that they hate the cannabis for the first time ever. So now it's transitioning back to high quality craft, small family estates.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely agree with that.
And I think it'll happen in Illinois because you had all those licenses go out to people that were kind of corporate types, I think, in some way or another. And they didn't really give enough craft licenses out for people that are like, I mean, I talk about cohibas, right? I mean, like when you have like a nice cigar, you're like, they didn't produce 9 million of these. They produced like 1,000,
Yep.
And the same thing goes for high quality craft cannabis. Is like the farm that produces 1,000 pounds but does it so much better than anyone is going to have that value. And that's going to be who our customer is. I'm not going after the guys that are row cropping thousands of acres. I don't care.
Yep. And where do you see the future of legalization of cannabis going? How do you feel about the direction of like federal legalization?
That'll make it crazy if it happens. The only benefit is the banking regulations will be eased up. The problem is if that happens, you're going to see what happened in California happen across the nation for like 10 years, where all these giant corporations jump in with billions of dollars, try to standardize cannabis production, fail miserably, and then say there's no money in cannabis, and then the small estate vineyards will come back.
Yeah. Does that change the way you do business as far as like a marketing point of view? You got to tiptoe around what you're trying to really be there for.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're not allowed to. I mean, like, if I had any other business right now, I could heavily target ads off Instagram, TikTok, social media, and say best cannabis fertilizer ever. Same thing with Google AdWords. You could say best cannabis fertilizer, but you're banned from using any of those terms. So like, all of our reach is organic.
Yeah, it's a struggle. I'm pretty stubborn on the way I want to do my business because I'm here for a very specific audience and I want to stay true to that. But it does make it difficult to get business done day to day. No one wants to really work with us, and we got to tiptoe around everything when I really don't want to be quiet about it, but it's tricky. Yeah. So hopefully, I didn't think I'd be here at this point, even with legalization. So I am somewhat hopeful because I always figured the day was coming, just I would never see that day.
Well, it's coming soon. I mean, what Congress is trying to do is they already have the legalization stuff all drafted. They're waiting to drop it at the right time, close to an election cycle.
Yeah.
And they got all the paperwork done like shortly after 2020. They just been kind of holding on to it.
Using it for a tool to get votes.
They're using it for a tool to get votes in 2024. And they're also going to, what they're trying to do, this is kind of actually somewhat conspiracy theory, but what people are saying is that
give it to me.
they want the CBDCs to be launched first before they have cannabis going legal, because they don't want it to be a cash business anymore. So in order for them to want cannabis to be legal in all 50 states, they need to have a way to track and trace and control the dollars being spent, just like they do in liquor.
Yeah. How do you think that changes the black market?
I mean, there's always going to be a black market because, if I want to barter something with you with silver dollars, I'm going to, if I don't want to go to a store to buy lower grade salt grown cannabis that has powdery mildew on it, I'm going to go to my buddy or a network of friends, and we're going to swap and trade,
Yep.
And a lot of times if the guy doesn't have cannabis, he's going to have something. You might have silver dollars. You might have something else you want. You might just have some other type of tangible asset. But I mean, the black market is just like bootlegging. I mean, there's still people making really high-end moonshine in this day and age, right? I mean, to a much lesser extent, but
No,
I know
that's true. But that does mean that like the way the black market looks today isn't the same it was 30 years ago. And I don't think it's going to, like you said, it'll always be around, but I can't imagine it looking the same in 20 years.
And I don't think it's going to have to, like we said. I think if you get enough backyard gardeners in the nation to go mainstream and want to plant 2 or 3 or 4 plants,
yep.
And realize, so it goes from, you're not going to be selling drums of nutrients as much, but you're going to be selling thousands of bags of 2s and 5s and things like 2-pounders,
Yeah. Well, and instead of going to the local street corner to get something, you're actually going to your uncle or your brother,
Mhm.
your cousin, someone more within the family or within your circle of friends, instead of like a guy who knows a guy.
Exactly. It'll be more home based.
Yep, exactly.
Could you talk maybe to a particular memory or interaction you had with a customer that used your product line?
Yeah, I mean, we have, and I always tell people, like, look at our on our social media. Just look at our comments. I mean, some of the people on there are saying that it was life changing them, and this is why I think it was life changing, because we took 15 bottles out of their life and shrunk it down to a top dress and a tea once a week, and it brought growing down from a science down to I can do this myself. I'm capable of this. This is not as complicated as they're making it seem, So most of our growers, and you guys can look at our Instagram, will say that like our green aminos changed their life because, they were losing 25% of their clones, or every time they went to transplant, they had transplant shock so bad they'd lose 2 weeks of the plant's life cycle. And so just by giving them a product like green aminos that snaps them out in 48 hours or less, I mean, game changer for them. They don't know why it works or how it works, but they know it works,
Yeah.
Same thing goes for the fertilizer. It's like our dry fertilizers, if you look at it pound for pound, are cheaper than all the bottled nutrients. And I'm not telling people to go away from the bottle. I'm just saying some people didn't have access to grow because they couldn't afford the system. Now it's like, well, a bag of veg, $35, another $35 for some green aminos. So for under $100, you could have a really good start to your growth.
Yeah.
And you could grow 10 to 12 plants or more of that.
So the green amino seems to be like the go-to tool in the toolbox for you guys.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, I use it for home gardeners. Like I use it for people like my parents and their friends. They have, everyone's got these backyards, decks, or patios where they have these mismanaged, 3-gallon pots that have like gray looking soil and it's been sun bleached for years, right? And their plants are just kind of barely living because they're not really valuable plants. I go and throw the green aminos in some water and mix it in there, and the plants are just boom.
Well,
think about the last time you've ever watered or you've ever fertilized your indoor plants in your house, just sitting there by the kitchen.
We didn't until recently, and I actually have some plants that look like that on my back porch. So I think I'm going to go home and give that a try with the aminos now.
Yeah, hit it with the green aminos. It's crazy. So like, I mean, I think we've just solved people's problems for pennies on the gallon, because I mean, it's only a teaspoon per gallon of green aminos, which is like, God, I don't know, 5 cents, 10 cents. I don't know. Yeah. And we just gave them something that they could treat anything that they have.
Yeah, cool. I'm looking forward to using the product more. I've used it before in the past, but now, now that we have a little bit of a deal and a sponsorship with you guys, I'm looking forward to bringing it into our garden here at the store. I'm looking forward to working with Mike. Mike's going to come into the garden with me, the uneducated guy, and he's going to help me and other people with my background who just don't know what we're doing really. and he's going to help us all learn how to use this product and really master our gardens. I'm looking forward to bringing my garden back to life.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm here to help whenever you need it too. So,
All right on. Well, hopefully I can get you out here maybe one of these. I know you're a busy guy, but we do events quite often throughout the summer, and we'd love to get you out for one of our events. Maybe
Yeah.
we can have you out for one of our guest judges for one of our competitions.
I'm hoping to be out there in July.
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
we got our grow off and our Olympics and everything we're doing, so that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that's what I'm shooting for. So, I mean, I just don't, I want, and my son's going to be born at the end of May. So it gives me maybe a month or 6 weeks
Okay.
to, you know, I'm still going to be working the whole time I'm doing that too. So I don't want my wife to hate me too much.
Yeah, I understand. I have 5 kids. Mine are all bigger now, though. They're all teenagers. So
Good.
yeah, it's really, man, that's the challenging part about this is finding that balance. But you know, I'm up to the challenge. I love what I do. I love my family too, though. So, but yeah, you know, do you have another question?
No, I just wanted to give you a chance here before we wrap up do you want to plug anything, your social medias, your websites, all of that? Where can
Yeah.
people find you?
Yeah, I mean, our Instagram is probably our biggest kind of nurturing platform. It's at the GreenGro with no W. And because we're shadow banned for the naughty topics we talk about, you have to like type it out the whole way. But on YouTube, we have GreenGro Biologicals, and it's just video after video after video of me talking about each product, how to use it, why to use it, what it's for, common questions in the garden, things like that.
Awesome.
You know, and the website's thegreengrow.com.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us today. We're looking forward to working with you more in the future, have another sit down. And we're definitely looking forward to using your product in the garden. Mark, I can't thank you enough. And
Thanks
we'll
again.
talk again soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much, guys.
All right, take
Yeah,
care,
thank you,
brother.
Mark.